The day the sky burned, nobody screamed. Not because we were brave, but because we were broken. The Erathians came in silence. Ships the size of cities drifted above the clouds, blotting out the sun. Their weapons didn't explode, they whispered. One strike erased entire continents in flashes of blue light. Clean, silent, efficient, the United Nations fell in 48 hours. Nations became memories. By the end of the first week, the survivors were huddled underground, too afraid to speak above a whisper that we called it the weak day. The day humanity realized we were nothing. I was there, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, 3rd Orbital Defense Command. My station was the ISS Artemis, the last human outpost still transmitting after the invasion began. From orbit, I watched the Earth go dark city by city, like a candle slowly dying in the wind. When the Erathians' transmission came, it wasn't in words. It was a feeling, a pulse through our comms, through our bones. Surrender. Serve. Submit. And we did. For a while. But humans have a strange habit the Erathians didn't understand. We don't stay broken for long. The first act of defiance came from a child. A girl named Aria, age 12, in what used to be New Berlin. She hijacked a fallen drone, rewired its core, and uploaded a single message that reached every surviving transmitter across the planet. They think we're done. They forgot who we are. Those 7 words became our anthem. Across the ashes, people began to rise. Engineers scavenged tech from fallen ships. Soldiers built weapons from alien scraps. Scientists on Mars Colony 11 decoded fragments of Erathian code and found their weakness. They weren't gods. They were afraid. Afraid of us that we called it Project Echo. A global retaliation plan forged from everything the invaders left behind. Our first strike wasn't a battle. It was a message that a silent pulse beamed back to their fleet, carrying the same signal they had sent us, but reversed. Serve. Submit. Surrender. For the first time, the Erathians hesitated. That was the moment humanity stopped being weak, and the universe learned what happens when you corner our species. We called it Project Echo because it was never meant to destroy. It was meant to remind them who they were dealing with. The signal we sent spread through their neural network like a ghost in the machine. Erathian ships began to falter, their formations breaking, their pristine discipline collapsing into chaos. For a race that considered itself perfect, confusion was the one thing they couldn't process. From Mars Colony 11, Commander Imani gave the order, Echo Phase 2. Make them bleed. Our ships rose from the dust, crude, uneven, but alive. Every hull was built from pieces of the enemy. Hybrid engines, alien shielding stitched with human rage. We didn't have fleets. We had revenants, fragments of what was lost, reborn with purpose. When the first human strike hit an Erathian dreadnought over the Atlantic, the explosion lit the clouds orange for hours. Billions watched it from the bunkers. It wasn't just victory. It was proof. The impossible could bleed. The aliens retaliated fast. They always did. But something was changing. Their transmissions became erratic. They screamed in frequencies only our tech could hear. Some of them begged at BY Week 3. We had names for every enemy ship, not call signs. Names, Vengeance. Area's Promise, Last Dawn. Each one piloted by someone who had lost everything. A father, a daughter, a friend, and wanted the universe to know what it meant to fight a human with nothing left to lose. The Erathians sent one final broadcast before the Battle of Titan. You cannot win. You are fractured. You are chaos. Imani replied with a smile. Exactly. The battle wasn't clean. It wasn't noble. It was human. We rammed ships. We tore through their cruisers with missiles made from mining drills. We turned desperation into strategy, insanity into art. And when their flagship finally fell into Saturn's rings, half the fleet went with it. The explosion carved a scar across the sky, a ring of light still visible from Earth to this day. Historians call it the Great Reversal, but for those of us who fought, it was simpler than that. That was the day humanity stopped surviving and started winning. The war should have ended at Saturn. It didn't. When the Erathians fell, their transmissions kept coming, but not from any fleet. The signals were old. Older than them, coordinates. A location beyond the Kuiper Belt. The remnants of our Navy, less than 20 ships, gathered in orbit above Titan. We were exhausted, half of our systems fried, Our captains held together by caffeine and trauma. But curiosity, that was something no alien had ever managed to kill in US. We followed the signal. The journey took 40 days. Past Neptune, past the frozen dark, into a region no telescope had ever mapped. And there it was, a construct the size of a moon, pulsing with faint blue light. Not a ship, not a planet, a monument that we called it the Origin Gate. When our sensors touched its surface, it responded. A wave of energy cascaded through our systems, and suddenly, every human ship received a transmission. It wasn't the Athenians. It was something older. Something watching. You have evolved faster than expected. The voice was layered, not sound, but thought. Cold, patient, ancient. It wasn't speaking to our radios. It was speaking to our DNA. The Arathians were chosen to test you. They failed. You were not meant to survive. Imani stood frozen on the command deck, her voice trembling. Who are you? We are the architects. The first. The watchers of potential. Humanity has surpassed its design. A silence filled the ship, the kind that humbles gods. You are no longer prey. You are anomaly. The transmission ended, and the monument went dark. No sound. No energy. Just the reflection of our ships against its dead metal skin. For the first time in the known history of our species, the entire crew, soldiers, engineers, scientists, said nothing. Not out of fear, but out of understanding that we weren't just survivors anymore. We were a variable the universe hadn't planned for. And as we turned our ships back toward the faint blue called Earth, one thought burned brighter than any star. If the architects ever returned, we would be ready, because the day humanity was weak was the day we learned how to never be again. When we returned to Earth, it was unrecognizable. The scars of the invasion had become monuments. The craters were filled with gardens. The bunkers became cities. For the first time in 1,000 years, humanity was united, not by fear, not by borders, but by memory. The survivors of the Titan fleet were called Echoborn. To the children born after the war, we were myths, the ghosts who had looked into the abyss and made it blink. But the truth was simpler. We were just human beings who had run out of options, and that made us unstoppable. From the ashes of Project Echo came something greater, Project Genesis. Not a weapon, a promise. We learned from the Arathian wreckage, studied the architect's signal, and built ships capable of crossing interstellar space. The new fleets bore no flags, no nations. Only one symbol, a silver spiral, wrapping around a burning sun. The emblem of a species that had defied extinction. Within 50 years, we reached the first extrasolar system, Kepler 442. We found ruins there, the remains of another race, long dead. Written in their stone glyphs was a message we would never forget. We fought the architects, too. It wasn't a warning. It was a welcome. By then, our children had never known weakness. They grew up under artificial suns, built colonies across asteroids, and looked at the stars not with fear, but with ambition. That we began mapping the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as witnesses. Every system we reached carried echoes of others who had tried and failed. But we, somehow, didn't fail. And then, one day, deep in the Perseus arm, our long-range sensors picked up something impossible. A signal. The same frequency we'd heard near the Origin Gate. But this time, it wasn't a message. It was a countdown point. 10, 9, 8. The architects were returning. Imani, now old and frail, stood before the unified council and whispered the same words that had defined our species for generations. They think we're weak. She smiled, the same tired, defiant smile that had survived a galaxy's worth of storms. Let's remind them what that means. The countdown ended, and then, silence. The stars dimmed. Every screen, every sensor across the human frontier went dark. In that void, something moved. A shadow across the cosmos, vast, elegant, alive. The architects had returned. Their presence bent the light of suns, warping space like a living equation. Whole planets trembled as their gravity folded under the sheer weight of their arrival. They spoke not through sound, but through every human neural implant, every quantum relay, every pulse of thought. You were not meant to persist. Your defiance is an error. The simulation ends now. Across the colonies, silence, then fear, then chaos. But on the bridge of Echoborn Prime, Commander Arya, The same child who once sent the first message of rebellion stood before the holographic image of the architect's structure, her reflection flickering across the glass. "They think we're still the same," she whispered. "They think we forgot." She turned to her crew, descendants of those who had fought at Titan, Mars, and Earth. Her voice was calm, steady, almost sacred. "Prepare the Genesis Protocol." The order spread across the human network like wildfire. Every ship, every outpost, every AI awakened. The stars began to flicker one by one, not dying, but synchronizing. Something was about to happen, something the architects had not calculated. And as their colossal forms advanced toward the human fleets, space itself began to hum, a low vibration, building in rhythm with every human heartbeat. The final confrontation had begun. The hum grew louder. Across the blackness of space, millions of human ships came online, not in chaos, not scattered, but perfectly synchronized. Each pulse of energy, each reactor, each heartbeat aligned as one. Arya stood at the command deck of Echoborn Prime, staring through the observation dome. The architects were now visible even with the naked eye, a moving continent of light and geometry, stretching for thousands of kilometers, folding and unfolding like a living thought. "Status?" she asked. "Quantum relays stable. Neural links at 82%. Echo grid holding," replied Captain Naira. Her voice trembled, but her hands didn't. The architect sent another transmission, a soundless wave that rippled through the fleet. Systems flickered, gravity distorted. For a moment, space bent backward. A few smaller ships disintegrated into particles of dust, but the line held. "They're probing us," Arya said, "testing how far they can push." Naira looked at her. "How far can they?" Arya smiled faintly. "Farther than they should." Outside, the formation of human ships shifted, massive dreadnoughts sliding into position, their hulls glowing with alien blue circuitry scavenged from old Erathian wrecks. Behind them, the orbital forges hummed, creating weaponry mid-battle. Rail cannons forged from asteroid metal, guided by AI cores awakened from centuries of sleep. The architect's shapes began to split, each fragment forming its own consciousness. Thousands of voices spoke in unison, overlapping, impossible to separate. End the experiment. Restore balance. Remove the anomaly. They didn't understand. Humanity had become the anomaly on the Mars relay station. A technician whispered into her mic. For every city they burned, in another sector, an old admiral murmured. For every world they silenced, and across the entire human network, a million voices finished the sentence together. We answer back. The echo grid pulsed. Every human ship lit up in rhythm, their engines blazing orange and teal, the colors of the dawn and the void. Sensors screamed as an impossible energy signature began to form between the fleets. Not weapon fire, something deeper. The birth of an idea made real. Arya's second-in-command turned toward her, eyes wide. "What's happening?" Arya whispered, almost to herself. "They wanted to test creation, now they'll see it." The energy between the two forces began to twist, condense, and spiral into a vortex so bright it burned shadows into the bridge walls. The architects shifted formation, reacting, for the first time, with hesitation. The battle for existence had begun, and humanity was ready to show the universe what it meant to fight with soul. The void erupted. From every corner of the human fleet, light burst outward. Rail cannons, plasma lances, particle beams, and weapons whose names had never existed before that day. The space between stars turned into a storm of energy and fire. The architects responded in silence. Their colossal forms shifted shape, bending dimensions like ribbons. Beams of impossible geometry cut through reality itself, slicing entire battle groups into nothingness. But humanity didn't retreat, that we adapted. Again, Echoborn Prime led the first wave. The flagship dove through a collapsing wormhole, emerging behind the nearest architect fragment. Its cannons fired in perfect sync, bursts of orange and teal energy that tore into the creature's shimmering surface. The impact didn't destroy it, but it made it scream. For the first time, the architects screamed. Across the human network, cheers erupted. Not because we had won, but because something that claimed to be a god had just proven it could feel pain. "Push the line," Arya ordered. The The fleet surged forward. Fighters weaved between gravitational folds. Missiles homed in on echoes of thought rather than heat. AI units from the old Earth defenses, ghosts of the past, flew beside living pilots, their digital voices whispering battle hymns written centuries ago. But on the far edge of the battlefield, the Helix Vanguard rammed directly into an architect node, detonating its entire fusion core. The explosion folded space like glass, sending shockwaves that split moons apart. Half the crew perished instantly, but the architect node disintegrated. Sacrifice had become strategy. Everywhere, human captains fought until their ships burned white. On one channel, a voice came through, a child's voice, barely audible. My mom said the stars were ours. Static. Then silence. Arya closed her eyes. For a heartbeat, the weight of it all pressed against her chest. Billions of lives, millions of deaths, one purpose. Then she whispered. She was right. Outside, the architects began to collapse inward, their once perfect geometry warping, flickering with instability. The human echo grid pulsed faster, brighter, tighter. Every consciousness, every ship, every spark of defiance became one rhythm. Space itself was bending. The line between mind and matter was dissolving. That Arya's neural link started to hum, flooding her vision with symbols and memories, fragments of humanity's collective thoughts, laughter, pain, birth, death, war, peace, love, all merging into one. Then, a voice echoed inside her head. Not human, not architect, something else, something new. You are becoming. The sensors flared. The light grew unbearable. Every screen, every camera turned white. And somewhere, deep within that storm of creation and destruction, the future of the universe began to change. When the light faded, the stars were gone. No sky, no sound. Only a vast, luminous ocean, rippling, weightless, endless. The battlefield had become thought itself. Arya opened her eyes, and the bridge of Echoborn Prime was gone. Her crew floated around her, bodies intact but glowing faintly, as if their veins carried starlight instead of blood. Where are we? Nairo whispered. No one had an answer. All around them, fragments of the architects drifted like shattered glass, each piece pulsing with fragments of voices, echoes of the beings who once believed they ruled existence. But now, those voices sounded almost afraid. They merged the grid, said Arya quietly. We're inside the network. Inside them. And then, for a heartbeat, she heard it. The hum beneath reality. Not mechanical. Not divine. Human. Billions of minds, all connected. Every ship, every colony, every survivor. Their thoughts woven together, forming a pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat across the void. We were no longer separate. We were one species, one mind, one idea. The architects tried to push back. Their fractured consciousnesses lashed out, reforming their geometry, trying to regain control. But the new humanity was beyond geometry, beyond control. Arya raised her hand. The space around her responded. She could see the data of the universe, energy fields, molecular lattices, even the pulse of dark matter, bending to her will. Every human could. It was as if knowledge itself had become instinct. They created gods, she whispered, and forgot that gods can learn. The luminous ocean rippled. The remains of the architects began to shudder and fold inward, as if gravity itself rejected their existence. The human presence inside the network expanded, rewriting the equations they had once written for us. Every time a fragment of architect code collapsed, a new light took its place, bright, warm, human. Then, from the distance, a shape began to rise from the luminous sea, massive, radiant, infinite. A remnant of the original architect consciousness, gathering the remaining fragments of its empire into one last, defiant form. It spoke, its voice resonating across every human mind in existence. You have become what you despised. You are no longer human. Arya looked up, eyes glowing with that same teal and orange fire that had come to define this new age. No, she said softly. We finally are. The ocean trembled. The architect form loomed closer, its mass stretching beyond galaxies, and the new humanity began to rise to meet it. The architect form towered above the luminous sea, a cathedral of light and logic, its surface alive with shifting runes that described entire galaxies. It was not one being, but the memory of a million civilizations that had fallen before us. And now, for the first time in eternity, it hesitated. Below, humanity glowed like a single sun. No longer bound by flesh or metal, we were awareness, compressed into pure existence. Our shape was fluid, undefined, infinite. Aria's voice echoed across the new network, clear, powerful, everywhere. You built this universe as a test. You chained creation to rules. You thought we'd stay inside your equations. The architect's response came as thunder across thought. Rules define life. Without them, all collapses. Then maybe collapse is how evolution begins. With that, the new humanity advanced. The luminous ocean surged upward, waves of pure wool crashing into the architect's form. Every strike wasn't a weapon, but a concept. Defiance, curiosity, compassion, reshaping the enemy's energy. The architect retaliated. Space cracked open, and from within it poured torrents of raw information. Collapsing stars, rewritten histories, flashes of the countless species they had erased before us. Each memory hit the human network like a storm. Entire clusters of minds flickered out, overwhelmed by the flood of cosmic pain. But the ones that remained adapted, learned, absorbed. Knowledge became armor. Emotion became power. For every world the architects had destroyed, humanity created two more. Simulations within simulations, sparks of potential spun into existence by sheer will. The architect's form began to fracture. Its perfect lines wavered. It bled color. This cannot continue. It whispered, voice trembling with something new, fear. You are chaos given mind. No, Arya answered. We are life given purpose. The luminous ocean churned. All across the horizon, human lights ignited. Billions of souls blazing brighter than any sun. Each one a fragment of memory, of laughter, of loss. Everything that made us human, weaponized through unity. The architect screamed, a scream that shook entire dimensions. Its body expanded, consuming stars in desperation, drawing from the dying fabric of the cosmos to restore itself. But the more it consumed, the smaller it became. Because the universe was no longer its creation, it was ours. Arya felt the pulse in her mind. Billions of hearts beating as one. Billions of voices whispering a single word that echoed through existence. Together. The final clash was inevitable, light against light. Thought against thought. The architects seeking to erase. Humanity seeking to redefine. And as the two forces collided, the cosmos itself began to unravel, not into destruction, but into possibility. The clash between humanity and the architects tore the universe open. Space rippled like fabric in a storm, stars bending, galaxies unraveling into threads of energy. Time itself twisted, replaying moments of creation and extinction in the same heartbeat. Everything that had ever lived, every thought that had ever been born, spun inside that maelstrom of light and memory. And at its center, two forces stood opposed. The architects, a billion-fold intelligence forged in order and symmetry, burning cold white, and the new humanity, vast, radiant, chaotic, pulsing orange and teal, the colors of flame and infinity. Arya floated at the convergence point, her form. Neither human nor divine, but something between. The echo of all that humanity had been vibrated inside her. Pain, love, rage, hope, and that unstoppable will that no algorithm could predict. You can't erase us, she said. We are the noise your perfection couldn't calculate. The architect's response shook eternity itself. Perfection demands silence. Then you'll never understand life. The architect's core flared, a supernova of white geometry exploding outward. Whole clusters of human light dissolved, absorbed into that wave. The pain was unimaginable. Billions of minds flickering out like candles in a storm. But where one fell, another burned brighter. Every death added weight to the human network. Every memory, every scream, every sacrifice strengthening the resonance that held it together. Humanity had stopped fearing death. It had turned it into energy. Across the collapsing void, the remnants of ancient civilizations began to awaken, echoes of the ones the architects had purged. Their remnants, hidden deep in space-time, flickered to life in the wake of humanity's defiance. They did not join us. They remembered us. Their memories became gravitational wells, drawing the battle's energy inward, focusing it toward one single convergence point, the heart of the luminous ocean. The architects realized too late what was happening. Humanity wasn't fighting to win. It was fighting to transform. The echo grid pulsed one last time, a heartbeat that reached across all dimensions. Every surviving consciousness aligned with Ares. The light that had been a weapon began to fold inward, compressing into something beyond understanding. Even the architects froze, unable to process what they were seeing, because in that moment, humanity stopped behaving like a species and started acting like a force of nature. The storm intensified. Matter, time, and thought collapsed into a single blinding point. A star being born not from fusion, but from will. The architect's voice grew faint. "You will destroy everything." Ares' reply came like thunder across eternity. "No, we'll begin again." The light swallowed everything, and the universe, all of it, began to reset. Silence. For a time that had no measure, nothing existed. No light, no sound. Only the faint echo of something that once had been a universe. Then, a pulse, soft, rhythmic, alive. Across the void, fragments of light began to flicker. Not stars, not yet, but the first sparks of rebirth. Each one carried within it a memory, a voice, a touch, a dream. And somewhere in that ocean of beginnings, a shape began to form. Arya drifted through the newborn dark, surrounded by particles of radiant dust. Her body, if it could still be called that, was light wrapped in thought. She could feel the hum of creation beneath her, the heartbeat of a new cosmos taking its first breaths. "Is this death?" she whispered, but a voice answered, gentle and infinite. "No, it's inheritance." She turned and saw them, millions of luminous forms, all around her. The faces of humanity, past, present, and future, fused into one endless constellation. They weren't lost. They were the universe now. Each mind had become a node of existence, a point of light in the cosmic lattice that replaced what the architects had built. There were no more rulers. No more tests. Only creation. Arya reached out, and the dust around her obeyed, swirling, condensing, igniting. A new sun was born in her palm, burning warm and orange against the black. Every human consciousness followed her lead. Stars flared into life across the void, billions of them, forming new galaxies, new worlds. The architects were gone, their order erased, but traces of their patterns still shimmered faintly in the deep, reminders of the symmetry that once enslaved existence. "They're still here," whispered Nyra's voice, somewhere in the radiant sea. "Yes," Arya replied. "But this time, they'll answer to us." The newborn universe vibrated, resonating with her words. Each pulse of light matched her breath. The rhythm of humanity's will woven into the structure of reality itself. And far across the void, in the dim edge of this new creation, something stirred, a remnant of the old order, faint but aware, watching the new stars take shape. It did not speak. It waited. Because even in rebirth, balance demands shadow. The universe was quiet again. The stars hummed softly in their cradles of dust, newborn galaxies drifting through the dark like glowing seeds. Humanity was everywhere now, not bound by flesh or home or gravity, but woven into the very code of existence. They had not conquered the architects. They had become what the architects never could: balance. Arya stood, or rather, existed, at the heart of the new cosmos, where time folded like silk. She could still feel them all. The laughter of children reborn as starlight, the courage of soldiers woven into the nebulae, the dreams of countless generations pulsing in every atom. The voice of the last architect whispered through the void, no longer proud, no longer cruel. Just curious, you remade everything. But what are you now? Arya smiled. The question you should have asked, she said softly, is who we became. The architect's form flickered, a shadow trying to understand light. And who is that? Arya's eyes glowed with the reflection of 10,000 suns. We are the echo of every heartbeat that ever refused to give up. We are the chaos that learned to create. We are what comes after gods. She extended her hand. The architect hesitated, then dissolved into her light, absorbed not as an enemy, but as memory. Across the newborn universe, humanity expanded, building worlds, shaping stars, guiding evolution not with domination, but with understanding. Each world, each being, carried within it a fragment of that long-forgotten truth. Weakness was never failure. It was the beginning of strength. And in the farthest corner of this new reality, where the last trace of darkness still lingered, a pulse of light flickered, gentle, rhythmic, familiar, the heartbeat of creation. It whispered through the stars, through every living thing, through time itself. The day humanity was weak was the day we learned to answer back.